Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do another walkthrough image edit, and today I am trying to recreate an effect I did a while ago on an image, and that image is this one. This is the starting point of the image, and this is closer to what I want to get it to. I did this image about a year ago, and I'm kind of interested in recreating this effect and showing you guys on tutorial. So let's get started. So I'm back here at the base image, and one thing I definitely need to figure out is how to get some of the highlights up in the general image, and especially the hair where it's really dark right there. So I'm going to go start, and before I get started on this, if you like to use layers frequently while you're doing your editing, you can use layers between any steps you would like to. I do not do layers when I am doing my tutorials or my personal images. I only do that with client work. So you can go ahead and set those up here. If you need down here. If you need an extra layer of your image, you can click on your background image and go down to this little fresh sheet, and that'll make a background copy of your image. You can use that for doing effects on the actual image itself to kind of create save layers. And you can also go up here and use add adjustments for most of the adjustments that we can do. That includes your brightness, contrast, levels, and let's see, your selective color. So if you need to use those, go ahead and use those. So to get started, I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, Shadows and Highlights. What I'm trying to do is bring in some of the highlight, particularly in the hair, not losing too much. So now if I slide this radius bar and my shadows over, you'll notice when you first open shadows and highlights, it will automatically make a bunch of changes on your image, but I don't really like the changes it leaves it at. So again, sliding the radius bar and the shadows over tends to kind of pull the shadows in a bit and make them a little more realistic. But as you can see from our preview here, it brings in a lot of highlight on the hair, which is very useful. Just play around with that a little bit. Alright, that's looking good to me for the shadows section. And now, when we go to the highlight section, I probably won't change any of this. We'll see. See, it's just affecting mostly the shadows in the background there on that, or the highlights in the background on that tree. But I'm going to try and fix that section right there a different way. As you can see, it's kind of blown out. And as for color, I'm going to leave it a little higher just for now, maybe for the sole purpose of adjusting later in another tool. Add just a little bit of mid-tone contrast, which kind of finishes over that shadowed area. So we started here with our shadows and highlights, and now we are here. A little more highlight there in the hair. The shadows are a little lifted. It's a little easier to work with, and it's good. So next, I am going to go ahead and try and fix up a couple of errors or problems in this image, particularly this bright spot in the background right here, and also do some skin and blemish removal on the body. If you want, you can use your layers and create a layer specifically for these purposes. So I'm going to start by zooming in and going up to the bright spot in the image. Now, probably one of the best ways to fix this that I know of and like to use frequently is to use my teardrop tool right here, which grabs color. So as you see right here, I've got it selected. And what I want to do is I want to find a point on the tree that's less bright that I can kind of use to shadow some of that in. Try right there. So now down here you can see I've got that brown selected that I teardropped and grabbed a sample of from the tree. And then I'm going to go in with my brush tool right here. So I've got my brush tool selected. I've got it on normal, so it will actually add the color I have right here in at the opacity that I have selected right here. It's at 18, and I'm going to go ahead and try and use that. Also, up here, you might want to check and make sure and see where your hardness is for when you're adding color. It's really soft right now, and I'm actually going to say that's ideal. So now I'm just adding a little bit in. Trying to shadow down some of those brighter chunks of the tree. Still staying fairly bright and white right here. So even through that, it feels very kind of bluish almost from the light. I'm going to go in here so I can add a little bit of warmness to that tone and see if that'll change some things. So I went in here and I selected a tone that has a little more saturation. Click OK. And back to my brush tool. There we go, that's doing it a lot better. See, that saturation kind of is making that blue tone from the white light go away. Just pop out. It's a little less noticeable now. I think because some of these sections are so bare, I'm going to go ahead and use my stamp tool right beneath the brush tool right here, clone stamp, and grab some of this patterning right here. See if I can't add a little more to these sections. There we go. That's making it a lot less of big white open space in the background. I'm also going to take my clone stamp tool, still selected, use the Alt key again to click right there, grab some of that, try and just kind of get rid of some of this right spot right here too. So that's a lot better. So we started with the image here, and now we are here. So now that the background's a little more under control, we have better control over our model's lighting and appearance. So now I'm going to go in. I'm going to use the healing brush. Make sure it's on content aware up here and normal. And I'm going to go ahead and start getting rid of some of the spots on the skin. So, in case I didn't mention it earlier, you can use your bracket tools beneath your plus and minus keys on your keyboard to make your brush size bigger or smaller. What I'm trying to do is just get rid of some of the bigger blemishes on the skin, first of all. Now, some of these are freckles, and some people may want to leave freckles in. Just for this tutorial, I will be removing them. see some of these are like white scars left over from past bumps. Find a lot of those in the skin. Just trying to get rid of the most noticeable ones. I don't know if you can see, but I am making my brush size bigger and smaller with the bracket tools as I go from bump to bump to get the most precise cleanup. Alright, that looks a lot better. So I'm going to go take a peek over here. One thing I noticed is I cleaned up a couple of these pretty heavy neck wrinkles. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of that too. Make that edge a lot softer. Alright, so now I'm just going to take a quick peek over the dress, hair and stuff, and see if I can't see any other little pieces of dust or anything that need to be cleaned off. But I'm not really seeing anything that's standing out to me, so I think we can move on to the next step. So now that I have the blemishes cleaned up and I've got the bright spots in the background under control, we're going to go ahead and start doing a couple color shifts. So first of all, I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and Selective Color to try a few things on color in the image. As you can see, down here, when you move the black bar on the color red, you'll notice that the skin can get kind of more texture or less texture, and that's because the red is very prominent in the skin tones. You can also see it affecting the background colors as well. I'm going to tone it down just a little bit, just to kind of make it a little softer. I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow to the skin, as well as a little red. Now it's adjusting the whole background, so let's see here from start to finish with just adjusting these reds. You can see the skin lightens up just a little bit, becomes a little softer, but it's still got color because we added some in with by downing the cyans, which makes reds, and upping the yellows. Now, just for your information, I talk about this in most of my tutorials, but when you're using selective color, what you can do is you can go up here to the colors, and you've got red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, white, neutrals, blacks. So that's pretty much all the main color channels you can work with. And I think selective color is the only tool that gives you access to all of the colors and then all of the neutrals as well. And when you're working in here, it will say cyan, magenta, yellow. So what that means is when you make plus, you add to the percentage of cyan, you're making more cyan. When you say minus, you're adding red to the image. And with magenta, it's magenta versus green. And with yellow, it's yellow versus blue. So less yellow means more blue. Less magenta means more green, and less cyan means more red. And black, obviously, less black means more white in the image and in that color channel. So you'll see that demonstrated a little more as we go through selective color. And I might actually use selective color several different times in this image. So now we're done with our reds for now. And I'm going to go ahead and go to cyans. So I'm actually going to decrease yellow and add blue. So you can see that's affecting the dress a lot. I really want to try and kind of pump in those cyan tones. So I'm actually going to leave magenta fairly in the center. And with cyan, I'm going to add cyan. And with greens, I'm going to go ahead and try and reduce greens, because we're trying to get that kind of teal cyan forest look in this image, as you saw. Go ahead and go to the neutrals. Just a little more. Now I'm going to go down to the blacks. Add just slight shifts in the blacks, because I actually have to do some other stuff before we really get into the finalized color correction. So I'm going to click OK, and we started here when we went into selective color, and we ended here. So I'm going to go back and look at our final image again. And I'm looking at this, and I think it might be time to do some highlighting and then go ahead and change the hair color. So to do that, I'm going to go down here on my toolbar and right click on this symbol to select the dodge tool. Now that I have the dodge tool selected, I'm going to go ahead up here, and I do indeed like that it's on the midtones and the exposure is 8. That's pretty good. What I'm going to be doing with this is highlighting the hair a little bit. So I'm trying to bring out these midtones and make them a little more striking. Also going to do it down here in the braid. Very carefully. So we're kind of bringing in some of those mid-tone highlights. And now, before we're even done with the hair, I'm going to just go ahead and try a little sweeping along some of the brighter points on the back, just for a little extra highlighting. Let's see if I like that. I'm actually going to go ahead and back that up a little bit and just do one sweep right along here. Alright, now I'm going to go back up to the midtones bar up here and pick highlights. We're still in dodge. I'm going to go back up to the hair and just work some of the highlights in. I'm exaggerating these highlights a little bit because when I add the red tones in, it could decrease the contrast of the hair a little bit. Alright, I think that's good for now. So I'm going to go ahead down here to my color palette. I'm going to go up here to these reds near the top, I think. Alright, so I've got a really bright red picked out. And now I'm going to go to my brush tool up here on my toolbar. Right now I have normal selected. And I actually might try hue. This will be a little bit of an experiment. So what I like to do when I'm painting in Photoshop is I like to brush way over the amount that I really need and then kind of relief the color away where I don't need it. And you can paint however you feel most comfortable. So let's see what this is doing. I think it's going to be too dark to use hue. So we're going to actually go back up to normal. As you can see, I'm just kind of painting more than I need. Great, got it everywhere. Now I'm going to go back in with the history brush, and many of you will probably be doing this on layers instead. But this is how I prefer to do this. And I'm going to go above my brushing before I added color. Now that I have my history brush selected, its hardness is 0. I'm actually going to turn that up to about 65 because that seems to be a better painting point for finesse. And turn its opacity up all the way to start with. And increase the brush size. And then what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of start caving away at where I don't want that color to start with. Now this can take a while to do a good job. Some of you may try selecting the hair, but I find that this, just doing it through the painting method, is way more precise than a selection with hair. Alright, now that I've gotten some of it kind of nicked away, I'm going to turn down the opacity to about 30. I'm going to make my brush smaller. Go in. Actually, I'm going to keep changing my opacity as I do this. Whatever gives me the most precise and quick method of getting rid of the color. Now for those of you using layers, one really useful thing about using the layers when you do this is that in the end, if you don't like the opacity of the hair color, you can remove some of it. I'm going to do that in a different way here in a sec. Turn this up a little bit more. Very carefully paint out the ribbons. So now I'm actually going to go and kind of do an overhaul color here. Turn it down a bit. I'm using a lower opacity to kind of brush into these areas with stray hairs. Show over the whole area again, kind of reduce that color. I'm using a zero opacity over these sections with ribbon. Alright, I just have to brush color out softly in areas again, down here. Color's too intense still. Alright, now we can go back in with selective color. So again, image adjustments, selective color. I'm going to hump the reds. Then go to magentas. Hump those. Started here, now we're here. We'll go to hue and saturation now. Go to reds. Hump in the saturation on the reds. Now, brightness and contrast. I'm going to actually cancel out of that. So let's take a look. So now what I really need to do is repump in my highlights. So I'm going to go ahead . A little bit too much. Back it up a bit. going to go to select color. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and use my teardrop tool. What I want to get is this highlight to match this highlight's color. So I'm going to select this highlight, and then use my brush tool, use hue down there, pump it. So we're getting a little bit more of a match between those colors. I'm going to dodge this area again, and as you can see, it starts to show up as red instead of blue and purple. So here's where we're at right now. And now what I really want to work on is this background. And if I can remember right, the way I did this was by doing a color overhaul on that background. I'm actually going to try it through hue and saturation. So I'm going to go to greens. Actually, let's go to yellows. Master where it is. Okay. I'm getting a little closer. I'm going to go ahead and actually, let's try this in reds first. As you can see in the background here, we have a lot of yellows kind of pulling through in these kind of ruddy red areas. I'm going to try and reduce the yellows on that. And this is going to make the foreground look crazy. But I'm not done yet. Alright, so yes, it's absolutely crazied up the foreground. And to fix that problem, I'm now going to say hue and saturation before we did the selected color shift. And let's turn the opacity all the way up. I'm just going to grab my color in the foreground here and bring it all the way back in. Let's see. So just to do a quick selection of all this. As you can see, it's mostly affecting the hair and skin. Just quickly select over those areas. Alright, so we started here, now we are here. Let's go back into hue and saturation, down to the cyans again. I'm going to start pumping these. So that just, it's very, very subtle. You might not see it, but that adds just a little bit of extra cyan. Now I'm going to go to the greens. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to desaturate them and push them towards blue. And I'm also going to go to yellows. Desaturate them as well. That's only for the background. I'm going to resaturate our model here. Alright, so our model has been desaturated of her yellows, so we got to resaturate her. So we go back above our hue and saturation right here. Again, if you're using layers, you'll be doing this differently. And re-add her yellows. It's a very subtle shift, but it's good. Oh, got a little bit too much right there. So again, it's mostly just affecting the skin and hair color, and very, very subtly. So you might not even see the shifts. Ooh, too much right there. So there we are. And now, before I continue a little further, one thing that's bothering me just a little bit is there may be just a little runoff from the hair color up here along this upper edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my dropper tool. Just grab this green color. It's kind of more out here. And I'm going to then also take my brush tool. We've got it selected to hue, which is good. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Just use it along this upper edge. Oh gosh, that's too green. Let's see. Let's try that. Too yellow. I don't know where all that yellow is coming in. I'm going to go ahead and take a sample from further away. That looks pretty blue. Again, go back to the brush tool. Too bright. Alright, so I'm going to down the opacity because that's not working out. That's much better. So what I'm going to do is use that downed opacity of that other color further away. Get rid of these colors that are similar to the hair tone so that it creates a nice contrast right along that upper edge. So also put some of that in here. Get some rid of some of those spots as well. Here. Okay. Now there's a lot less confusion up there along that upper ridge. think I'm also going to use that effect over this whole other area right here. Just turn down this kind of casting reds. I'm going to backtrack a little bit though. I'm going to turn down those ones right there. And what I'm going to do with this tree is go really low, just to use these cyans that I picked up, just to make that tree a little less noticeable. Alright, there we go. So now our model is becoming more of the focus in this image. And let's go way back up to the very start here to see where we started off. So this was the very start of this image. And now we are looking like this. So we're getting closer to this image. Let's see. So one thing I noticed now that we're really running up against is less contrast. And that's pretty easy to fix. I'm going to start heading in here and just trying it up. Just give it a little extra light to work with. Turn down that contrast, start to kind of try and bring in some of those shadows that we have that are really nice in this other image. And now I'm going to go back into hue and saturation and just really try and work with these colors I have. Just going to up the reds a little bit. Okay. A little closer. I mean, obviously the image is different. It was edited a year later. And I'm going to go down here into selective color. See what happens. It's kind of nice. I'm going to add a little extra right there. And because I'm adding a little extra red, I'm also going to go back in. So I'm going to stop. I said okay with my selective color of adding those extra darks to the reds. I'm going to use my history brush, go above my selective color to the hue and saturation, and just brush that extra red out of the skin tones to kind of keep that soft look we had going with the skin, or softer look. So that kind of gets rid of the worst of it. So we are there to here. And now, getting closer, and I'm actually kind of happy with this image. I mean, things change when you edit something a year later. Your tastes change. So I'm going to actually go back to hue and saturation again. I'm going to try something with the cyans again. Let's see if I like adding a little extra. It's probably good. Now, I'm looking at this image between here and here, and one thing I really like about the other image is how the background is shadowed out just a little tiny bit more, it seems. I'm going to go ahead and try and recreate that. Going up to adjustments, and I'm going to go back into curves. Reduce the curves. Sole purpose of re-highlighting the body so that the background holds that reduced curve look. So again, because I like the painterly mode more than the layers, I'm going ahead to hue and saturation above my curves and click on my history brush. Bring back in the highlights. Oh, that's too much. So I'm just going to re-highlight everything in the foreground. I like using this method more. It's more like painting to me. Kind of how you use your watercolors. I'm just re-highlighting these arms, all of the model in the foreground. Actually, I'm going to leave a little bit of the shadow up top here. I'm liking it right there. Turn down my hardness on my brush. Get rid of some of the harsh lines I was getting there. Be slightly less precise. Not make a problem. Alright, looks like I got it all. So, again, start there. And now we are here. So again, the focus is more onto the model by darkening the background a little bit and making her look a little better lit. It's a very sunny, bright day, so there was a lot of hot spots in the forest. And the only way we could get really good shots with detail was to put the model into the shadowed zones. Alright, so selective color. Pretty sure we're happy with our reds. We can pump it just a little more. I mean, it's getting really hot, but I kind of like that effect. I can actually say OK, history brush it. Hot spot that area a little bit. Now back, adjustments, color, we're moving on from the reds. I'm actually going to reduce the yellows just a little bit, the skin tone. I think that's all I'm going to do right there. It's fine, right about there. Greens, I'm not even sure if we really have green left in this one. We've got a little bit. Trying to make as much of the green in the image as I can, more of a teal or cyan color. I think we're good there. I'm pretty happy with where the cyans are in the image right now, so I'm not really going to affect that. And now we're down to our neutrals, and this is kind of something I do right at around the end of an edit, because this will kind of create the finalizing look of an image. So we can play around. Sometimes I like to play around with the yellows and the neutrals. I'm actually kind of liking it lower though. This kind of creates this nice contrast with the back shadows. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of gentle. That's good. I think that's good for the whites. Now with the neutrals, I probably won't mess a ton with the neutrals. Because, I mean, pretty much the neutrals are everything I've been working with this whole image. I'll add just a tad bit of magenta with this one. And a little bit of red. Now with the blacks. I really love playing with the blacks in an image because it really can bring out some nice characteristics. Mood. Add a little bit of blue to the shadows. Just a teensy bit of magenta. Just a little tiny bit of teal. So again, when we started this round of selective color, our image started here. Now it is here. And I am thinking this is good. This is my old image, and to tell you the truth, I kind of like the highlights and stuff of the new image a lot more. I'm going to try one last thing, just for kicks, go to color balance. One major difference between color balance and selective color is that selective color is way less likely to shift the brightness or darkness of your image while shifting colors. Color balance will shift your brightness, your brights and darks, depending on what tools you use in here. I'm going to go to highlights. And this looks good. So I think I'm going to call this good. I'm happy with the image. And so let's go to our start. This is how our image started. Pretty dark. It's got some issues with some bright spots. Model's pretty dark. Now our image is looking pretty awesome. There we go.